Hello, I'm Stacy Smith, and welcome to another edition of Around the Table, Politics 2020. This is where we discuss things that are political in nature and sometimes things that aren't necessarily political in nature. We have our great array of panelists once again, so I'm going to introduce them to you. We'll start with former Republican Governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Corbett. Mr. Corbett served as State Attorney General, also the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania. He now teaches law at Duquesne University. On the other side of the table is the former chairman of the State Democratic Party. That would be Jim Byrne. Jim also served as chairman of the Allegheny County Council and as mayor of Millvale. Jim is an attorney in town. Going back across the table on the Republican side is Keith Schmidt. Keith's political background is strong, dating back to the Reagan campaign in 1980. Keith was also the state director for former Republican Senator Rick Santorum, and he was an advisor to Santorum's 2012 presidential campaign. Keith has had his own consulting firm now for more than a decade. Jumping back to the other side of the table, the blue side of the table, as I'll call it, we find Amanda Green Hawkins. Amanda served as a national committee woman representing Pennsylvania for the Democratic Party. Amanda also served on Allegheny County Council and is currently an attorney for a major union that is based here in Pittsburgh. And if we go back to the GOP side of the table, we will find Chris Fry. Chris has a unique perspective on politics. He is the mayor of Newcastle, which gives him some insight as to how federal and state governments work with local governments. He's also in an area of Pennsylvania that helped Donald Trump win the presidency 4 years ago, and it's an area the Democrats would like to take back. So welcome all of you to our show, our program, and now we turn to the great one, the great philosopher of Around the Table, Joe Mystic. Joe is a familiar name in Democratic politics across the state. He served in various different positions with the city of Pittsburgh, including deputy mayor through the years. Joe teaches law at Duquesne University, and he also writes a column for the Tribune Review. Thanks for joining us. Let's start with this. Keith, I'm going to start with you if you don't mind. And that is that I'm going to put this on the table. On the past couple of episodes, we have talked a little bit about the vice presidential choice for Joe Biden and how crucial that might be. You say it's crucial, but why is this crucial? Don't people really vote for the presidency and not the vice presidency?
I would say in most cases, Stacy, that's absolutely the case. But I've argued now for probably a month or two that probably for the first time in anyone's life in America today, the vice presidential choice is more important than ever before. Because an argument can be made, even for those who support the Democratic nominee, that at best, the nominee is a one-term president, and a lot of agendas take 2 terms to execute. And at worst, he's 78 when he goes in, he's 82 when he leaves. He may choose, for one reason or another, not even to finish his first term. So what happens when that is the case, even among his base, I think there is a higher degree of scrutiny for his running mate because, in effect, people are making decisions on 2 presidents. They have to be comfortable that both of these people can be president of the United States. Now you say, well, that's always the case. Well, it's different this time. I can assure you that it's different this time. The conversations have already started. And add to that scrutiny is presidents, of course, are chosen by primaries in the process and delegates and whatnot. Vice presidents are chosen by one person. So I can assure you that Vice President Biden is under a lot of pressure right now. This decision will largely determine whether he will win the presidency in November, or at least one of the major factors. And I would suggest that the polls may tighten no matter what, just because of the fact that there is going to be an intense scrutiny, in some ways maybe even unfair, to whoever he picks for his number 2.
All right, before everybody else jumps in, I'm going to go to Joe Mystic. Joe, your thoughts? Any counter arguments to Keith?
Well, I don't disagree with Keith's general premise. He's been in these conversations. He's been in these discussions about vice president for Senator Rick Santorum, so he knows of what he speaks. However, I think there's a simple bar here. There's only one issue that must be considered, and that is whether the vice presidential pick can step in and serve as president. You know, if you forget everything else and you focus on that, I think he'll be okay. He has to pick somebody to fill that fill that gap in people's minds, and we've seen it before. Bill Clinton ran his first time. He was an unknown. He was a governor of Arkansas. This is not who you typically go to, but he picked Al Gore, who was a national figure, a United States senator. And he had to defy conventional political wisdom to do that because Al Gore was from the South. So what he did was he picked somebody who met the single criteria that he thought he needed to meet, and he was successful. We've seen some disastrous picks. George Bush Sr. picked Dan Quayle. Out of the gate, it was a disaster at his first press conference, at his announcement, and remained so throughout the campaign. But what Dan Quayle eventually said was, if they're picking on me, that means that the presidential candidate has a pretty clear run at this thing. So it's okay if they keep picking on me. So it's it's not as complicated as it might seem. It has to be somebody like the presidential candidate himself. It has to be somebody just like Joe Biden when he was chosen to be vice president. So if he looks for somebody who reflects his own values and his own expertise, I think he'll be all right.
We'll get into maybe who the choices might be, but I'd like to bring in Amanda right now and your thoughts on this.
Well, I think it's, of course, very important who he picks. It has to be someone who the American people can have confidence in, someone who also makes them feel good that that would be their representative, who would also be someone who could step up and be president. Now, I think that Joe Biden's conversations about who his pick may be have certainly drawn a lot of interest because he has basically committed, it seems, to choosing a woman as his running mate. And we know that that brings concerns to the electorate because we know that there is going to be issues or concerns about sexism, about whether or not a woman can do the job. And so there will be those issues to overcome. I mean, it's 2020 and I still hear men of various age ranges, races, saying that they wouldn't vote for a woman for anything other than school board. So that is something to also consider. Also, where is the person coming from? What state are they coming from? And which would be the best draw for the electoral college? Because this is about electoral math, not the popular vote. So looking at Georgia, a state with, is it like 16 electoral votes, or Michigan, Governor Whitmer, for example. And I know you said we would talk about specific people later, but these are things to also consider. What can they bring to the table in terms of helping with that electoral math?
Well, I want to go back to and ask you about Keith's argument that this is more crucial than any other time, given Joe Biden's age.
Well, and I do understand that because there is that perspective that, he is what we consider advanced age, and maybe he will resign. Maybe he will choose not to run next time. However, I always say that tomorrow isn't promised to any of us, and we have to make the best of the time that we have. So let's look at these first 4 years that we're talking about and getting through the issues and concerns of the American people first, before we start talking about what will happen 4 years after that.
All right, I want to go now to Chris Fry, the mayor of Newcastle. Your area went for Donald Trump 4 years ago. It seems like it's turning more and more Republican. Your thoughts about the Democratic vice presidential potential nominee?
I think it's important, just what the news says, CNN, and read some stuff from Washington Post. What we really got to take a look at is, I think his announcement is going to come at a time where it's going to boost his polling. It's going to boost everybody's appeal to. We got to remember that it's an election. Whatever comes about, he's not, obviously the person needs to be fit to do the job. Needs to be a person that has the abilities to complete the role as VP for whatever reason. If he's not capable of finishing, if Biden is too old, or he drops out, or he doesn't run again. But we have to also remember, I think, that his selection is going to go to help him win the election at some regard. I'm sure they think about that. I thought about that when I chose my campaign manager. You got to think about those things, and that doesn't take away from a woman or an African American who he selects. But I think when he makes his announcement, in the build up to it, it's obviously it's going to have its effects in terms of PR and marketing for his campaign.
All right, now I saved the Jim Byrne and Governor Corbett for the last year. So I will start with you, Jim Byrne. Your thoughts. You've been a state Democratic Party chairman. is it as crucial as Keith makes it out to be?
Yes, I believe that it is, for all the reasons that Keith has shared and all of the reasons we have shared in prior segments on this specific topic. I don't think any of us expects that Joe Biden, if he were to win, would run for a second term. And it is not outside the realm of possibility that for whatever reason, he wouldn't finish a first term. Those issues are not causing voters to move away from him. Not doing 2 terms, not finishing the first term. He's still winning, and he's up by double digits nationally and by double digits in many other states because people would rather vote against Trump than for him. But this is crucial. This is significant because people are going to look at whomever he picks as someone who are they comfortable with stepping into the role of president the very next day or in 4 years or somewhere in between, which really narrows the field of eligibility, in my opinion. The vice president deservedly and appropriately has said that he will pick a woman as a running mate. America's ready to elect a woman president, a qualified leader. America was ready in 2016. The decision not to support Hillary Clinton by the nation had nothing to do with gender and everything to do with our own issues as a flawed candidate. So who can be presidential on day one if needed? And we can begin to have a conversation of who may fit that parameter.
All right, great. Now, Governor Corbett, you have served as governor. You've had to work with the White House in different times. Just how important is this particular vice presidential choice this time around, do you think?
It may be one of the most important times in our history. Considering the time we're in, I don't know of another time that we were in such a difficult issue with the pandemic going on, with social unrest, dramatic social unrest going on, with the change in technology and social media changing everything. Who you pick is going to be very important, not just for today and tomorrow, but for 4 years down the road and thereafter for a while. Joe, you correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was Harry Truman said the vice presidency isn't worth a bucket of spit.
Yeah.
And you see vice presidents every once in a while. You'll see Mike Pence out there, and then sometimes he disappears for a couple of weeks. And particularly in this day of social media, you're going to see them out there. But it's really everything's led by the president. But because of the age of former Vice President Biden, I think it is a major concern. I think he did box himself into a woman. Nothing wrong with that, but that's a tactical decision he made. This is another tactical decision that he's going to have to reach. You know, there's only 2 qualifications, really, to be vice president. You have to be a citizen, and you have to be 35. Anybody can be vice president and president at that point. But this is going to be what gets me more votes, I think. Last election, truly, I think, the president succeeded on a lot of people in the middle not liking Hillary Clinton. It was almost ABC, anybody but Clinton. Well, his performance in the last 3.5 years has really created a fervor of anybody but Trump, I think. And you want to make sure you don't pick a vice president that moves people away from that feeling and say, I'm worried about this person coming in when Vice President Biden or President Biden either resigns from office or doesn't run for another term. So I think probably in our history could be one of the most important times. At least that's our perspective sitting here in 2020.
Right, July of 2020.
Hey, Stacy, let's talk about this age thing and this fragility argument head on. You know, once you hit your mid-70s, it's pretty much a crapshoot. There's not a lot of difference between 74 and 78, and it has a lot to do with a lot of things other than age as to whether or not you make it you make it much further. So this talk about Joe Biden and concerns about his health just rings false to me. I mean, look at the two, stand them next to each other. Look at the two, and you tell me which one is more fit. Tell me which one is more fit. You know, Joe
I
Biden
disagree
before
with
the pandemic ran everywhere from one group of people to the next. And Donald Trump's having a hard time getting down a ramp or drinking a glass of water without two hands. Okay, so let's just run that ad. And all I'm saying is run the visuals, run the ad. I wouldn't step
I
into a
absolutely
ring with Joe
disagree
Biden
with
at
you,
this
Joe.
stage. Be worth a lot of laughs probably, but I'd be concerned because he's in good shape. And he's in better shape than the sitting president. And they're only 4 years apart.
I think you're spinning something that just makes absolutely no sense. And I love you. I really do. I always have loved you. But this one, this dog don't hunt. I mean, the fact is you can question the demeanor or how he conducts himself. Nobody questions the energy level of the sitting president of the United States. And I know plenty of people in the early 70s and late 70s, and I think they would give you a hard argument that those 5 or 6 years are big years. That 78 is a lot different than 73 or 74. And furthermore, in the age of social media, in the age of literally you have to, and I'm not saying it's a good thing, but you have to watch everything you say and do. It's a feeding frenzy of the diminished capacity of the Democratic nominee and the fact that he gets confused and he doesn't finish sentences and goes on tangents that make no sense. And fair or not, it's the world we live in, and he's going to be judged by that. And there's going to be an increased scrutiny, as I said originally, because of that.
Keith, I love you
I was
back.
wondering who you were
I love you
talking
back,
about.
Keith, but I got to tell you, I'd stack up those situations in which the former vice president misspeaks to the situations in which the president misspeaks. And I don't think there's a contest. I think Trump has it hands down. He misspeaks on a daily basis, multiple times. So if we're going to do that, let's do a side-by-side comparison. What I'm saying is age isn't an issue. Age isn't an issue. Let's look at the two and how they perform. That's all I'm saying.
Well, not only do I think it's an issue, I think the Republicans are going to make it an issue, because I'll predict today in July, whoever the vice president picks for his nominee, that's going to be the focus of a large media campaign. They're going to literally do the heartbeat and say, are you comfortable with this person being the president of the United States? Are you comfortable with this person leading the free world? This person that only one person chose, not the American people. I can tell you right now that this is one of those first times that we're bringing them out of the basement. And when you make decisions as leaders, a lot of them are tough. This is probably the most important decision of his candidacy. But every time you make a decision, there's plenty of people that don't like your decision. That's why a lot of people try to push things down the road. They don't want to make certain decisions. This one, he's forced to make. And I think the great debate will begin, and I think it will be joined by a lot of people on the conservative base and Republicans and swing Democrats that are going to really focus on, do we want this unelected person, or at least the person not chosen by the American people in a primary process, to lead this country? I'm telling you, it's coming.
And I'm agreeing with Keith on that. I think that the question will be, is this person, or in this case, with the commitment to choosing a woman, is this person the one that we're comfortable with taking the helm, taking the lead here in our country? And
Very important.
and I understand what Jim Byrne is saying about Hillary Clinton's campaign having her own problems, but I can tell you, as a woman who was an elected official, as a woman who was a statewide candidate, I can tell you that the scrutiny and that the types of concerns and issues that people raise are different when it comes to choosing a woman than a man. So there are some gender issues at play. Some sexism comes into play, and we're going to have to overcome that.
All right.
I worked for the first woman mayor in the history of the city of Pittsburgh. And she was older. Sophie Maslow was a little older when she got elected. We suffered those attacks that were rooted in both sexism and ageism. At the end of the day, she just powered through it. And I think if you ask around, she's a mayor who's fondly remembered to have done a wonderful job for the city of Pittsburgh and for the people of the region. And ageism and sexism, aside, at the end of the day, she was judged on performance, and she did the job.
All right.
She had a pretty good deputy mayor too.
Yes.
Let's get back to the qualification issue real quick, if I may. Executive experience would be very, very important at least the level of major city, Atlanta, a state like Wisconsin, executive experience, to be able to move into another executive position. The executive algorithm doesn't change much. The geography and the geography may change, but the algorithm to be an executive office holder doesn't change that much. Other than the second consideration, national experience. That limits it to a couple of senators who were president. So you really do have a narrow field from which to choose from if you're going to alleviate the concerns people have about, can this person step in immediately?
All right, I want to ask this because Amanda brings it up several times here, and that is basically, was it a good or bad decision by Biden to lock himself in early to say that he is going to have a woman as his vice president? Anybody?
I'll jump in.
Go ahead, Amanda.
I was glad to hear that he was certainly considering a woman. But the idea that he would lock himself in did give me some pause, because now it becomes a matter of pressure, perhaps pressure put on him about particular women. Hey, you said women. Hey, how about a Black woman? We understand that there are certain women who are campaigning for the job, and it seems that it is exclusionary. It does seem that it becomes exclusionary.
I agree with that.
So I understand that he wants to select a woman, but he could have kept that to himself. That's what I'm saying.
And I agree with that. That's why.
Amanda. I agree with you 100%, because I think that the time has come probably for a woman on the ticket. And maybe he thought there was some advantage of putting it out there and let people chat about this. But if his intention was pick a woman, I think it would have been better for women in America if he just went through the vetting process, considered every qualified person in America, and decided on a woman. I actually think that helps him more than saying early on, before I even go through a vetting process, it's going to be a woman.
Mayor?
And that's why I made my statements in terms of the popularity in the campaign. You're still trying to get the emotions of people to come out. And I think he was wrong by saying that. And it's definitely exclusionary for him to come out and say that at this point. As Keith said, do the vetting process. Put out your ad in terms of that you're hiring. You let the folks come in who's interested, and then you properly vet them. And if it came out to be a woman or a Black woman or male, then you made the decision and you've gone about it the right way. I think he's still playing the game in terms of his campaign, and I think he did it at the wrong time.
I'm going to ask the governor this question. Governor, when you ran and successfully and became governor of the state of Pennsylvania, the lieutenant governor was not tied to you necessarily on the ticket. He ran as an independent. That's not the case now. Would you have preferred to run as a ticket as opposed to not knowing necessarily who your lieutenant governor was going to be?
Well, let's go back. When I ran in the primary, Jim Cawley was a candidate for lieutenant governor. We were very supportive of Jim, and he won in that point in time. We weren't supportive to the point that, it would look awkward if I got somebody else. But we worked very closely together, and that's what's going to happen now with the change here in Pennsylvania, where the governor gets to pick his lieutenant governor, and they run as a ticket from primary on. It could have gotten awkward if somebody else would have won. We would have resolved it, and gone forward. And I think that you can see what happened in the last election, with Wolf's first lieutenant governor being somebody who ran his own campaign, didn't perform very well. And then you have Lieutenant Governor Fetterman running a campaign and other people. But I don't know whether Mr. Fetterman would have been the selection of Mr. Wolf or not. I think it's much better that we run as a team from the primary on. And, 4 years from now, nobody's even going to remember this discussion.
That's a good point. Now, we don't have a lot of time left, unfortunately, so let's delve into this. And I'm going to start with Amanda. Who would be your choice for vice president for Joe Biden?
It would be someone who could help with that electoral college math. It would be someone with some with some executive experience. Jim Byrne previously mentioned that. And right now, we know he said he's considering a woman. So that leaves us with some battleground states like Michigan, states like Florida. And I know that he's considering Governor Whitmer, perhaps, also Val Demings. And of the two, executive experience would probably weigh out with Governor Whitmer, I'd say.
Okay, is that who you would like to see?
I would like to see the person who would be the best pick for this ticket. And
Trying to box her in.
Whitmer, let's take Governor Whitmer.
Stated like a true politician. All right, I'm going to stay on the Democratic side first here. So Jim Byrne, who would you see? Who would like to see?
I'll start where Amanda left off, and then I'll go a little more specific. Tactically, if I'm state chairman, I want somebody that's going to help us get the electoral map, someone with executive experience, someone that could step right in and lead. I really do like Governor Whitmer. Should be my first pick, and not too far behind is 1B, 1C, Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren.
All right, there's a lot of talk about Elizabeth Warren being probably up there high on the Biden's list. I'm not sure necessarily, though, that Joe, I'm going to bring you in on this one. I'm not sure as far as electoral politics that Mr. Biden would need Kamala Harris.
Well, I don't know. If you're looking for somebody with national experience and that gravitas, she certainly brings that to the table. The governor model's interesting. Governors actually run things, and in this pandemic, we've realized the importance of the role of a governor and how important it is to have somebody who knows how to run things. So, I could see any one of the gubernatorial prospects being tapped to sit in the vice presidential role. But I think he'll probably go for somebody a little more national, somebody who can actually step into the job if need be.
Well, who would that be? Your choice.
Well, Kamala Harris, I think, is a strong contender. She was not my favorite candidate throughout the debates and the primaries, but I think she's managed to hang in there and hold her own. That's why she's at the top of a lot of lists for his pick.
All right, gravitas. That's the word, Professor. Right. She has it.
Right.
All right, now let's bring in the mayor. Mayor, I'm going to ask you this question. Given your location and how that area has gone from really Democratic to Republican side, your thoughts about some of these potential candidates?
We're facing a lot of over the last couple of weeks. We're facing a lot of racial issues. So I think what it boils down to. I think for our community. So I spent a lot of time across the aisle with Democrats, some youth in our community, voting age, adult youth that are. I think they're going to be pushing more for an African American woman for our area. I think that's the consensus that if on terms of the Democratic side, I think if we go the full gamut, it'll go all the way through to just appearance. I think that's what's really going to be placed on the vote with a lot of the folks in this area because of the injustice and unfortunately what President Trump is being blamed for provoking throughout the nation. And I'm speaking from a kind of a mindset of a voter, not from an elected official, not from our position, but from a voter standpoint. I think you'll see a lot of that. The decision and will be based on appearance and who that person is.
All right, Governor Corbett, your thoughts on the potential Democratic vice presidential nominee?
I'm going to pick up a little bit what Joe was saying. I want executive experience in there. I would be picking a governor at this point in time. I'm sorry, no offense to the mayor of Atlanta or any other mayors or anybody, but you have to deal with the legislature when you're governor, just like if you're president, you have to deal with Congress. But now I'm going to put in some political math in this and say, if I'm looking at governors out there, the governors of Wisconsin and Michigan are key based upon last election 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. If you're going for the electoral math, assuming they won as governor, can they win that state for you in the presidential race? And I think that will be the case. And when it came down to the election 4 years ago, and it came down to Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Michigan, You take Michigan away from that, it really grows your electoral support, assuming everything else stays the same. Never assume that it's going to happen.
No, you can't. All right, Keith, we started with you. I'm going to end with you. Your thoughts.
Well, I would say I've looked at all the polls coming into this discussion to see where things stand. And number 1 and 2 for Biden is Kamala Harris, obviously, and Elizabeth Warren. I'd be personally comfortable with either one of those big things. He doesn't get any help in Massachusetts or California on the electoral side. And I fundamentally think that we would pick up swing Democrats if he chose either of those 2 women. The one that gives me a lot of fits is ranked around 4th or 5 in most polls and has been talked about all morning is Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan. He lost Michigan. She's a governor. She's clearly qualified to step in as the chief executive. She gives me some fits. But in the end, the presidency, whether we like it or not, is largely a popularity contest. And the 2 people that give me the most fits aren't on anybody's list. And I hope they never end up on anyone's list, especially Joe Biden's. And that is former First Lady Michelle Obama and former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice.
Interesting. All right.
Hey, Stacy, I guess we can't pick Tom Corbett, can we? That wouldn't work out.
No,
would it?
no,
That would-
God forbid.
Hey, Keith, thank you for sharing that. I have a call to make.
Yeah. I'm going to end it right now. Is there any symbolism here in the fact that you are wearing red today, Jim?
Oh, Governor Corbett's wearing blue. Of course, that's not a coincidence. Yeah.
It's called comfort
Clean and comfort.
and blue in the eyes.
All right. Thanks all of you for joining us once again for Around the Table Politics 2020.
Thank
And
you
we'll
all.
talk to you again soon.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Stacy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.